In this video, we'll be going over how to set up the menu settings of the FujiFilm GFX 100S. This is a 102 megapixel medium format camera, and we'll be providing some insights as to why you want certain menu settings along the way. So for photogrammetry projects where we're trying to create maps or models, we want to set up the camera in a certain way, and generally we want a very basic set of functions running, and we want to have everything as manual as possible. So first thing we're going to do is rotate the style to manual mode, make sure that we're capturing stills instead of video. Next thing that we can do is change this autofocus setting to manual, and then you'll want to set that focus on the ground and tape the focus ring. Finally, we want to make sure that we're running the latest firmware. So for the FujiFilm, you press and hold the display back button while powering on the camera. Here, version 1.21 is the latest, so we can now power cycle the camera. And this will allow us to go deeper into the menu settings. So one of the first things that you want to do is reset the camera to default settings. That way you don't have to be nervous that maybe a setting got changed that you didn't know about, and you don't necessarily have to go through every setting if you do it this way. So we'll go to user settings here, scroll down to reset. So there's actually 3 different reset menus with the FujiFilm. We only care about the still menu, so we'll do that one first. Okay, so now the menu settings regarding still images have been reset to their default, and then we'll do this process one more time, and we'll reset all the other settings. Select English. Okay, next thing that we're going to want to do is make sure that we got the correct date and time. Having the correct date and time can be useful when you're troubleshooting any mismatch issues between geotags and images. And so to do that, again, go to user settings and make sure you have the right date and time punched in there. We do, so we're going to leave that. One thing that's nice about this camera, it will remember your date and time even between those reset commands. So now we can go back to the menu, and then we're going to start from the top. So again, the idea here is we're going to leave most things at default because they likely don't affect us positively or negatively. There's lots of different features that this camera has that aren't being leveraged in an aerial mapping setting. So we're just going to kind of cruise through and change the ones that are critical. So here it's talking about image size and the quality, so we'll just leave those at the default. I'm content with those. We'll go through and scroll through these. The first thing that we come upon here that I definitely want to change is the white balance. Rather than having the camera choose the appropriate white balance setting that it thinks, I just want to set it to daylight, and that way I can confirm that it's going to be stable throughout the mission. Next, we're going to go through here. We're going to double check that our focus mode is manual focus. It's being dictated by the switch up here, so we're good. And then the next really important thing is making sure that image stabilization is off. So photogrammetry software is using the imagery and the geotags to help develop a model of the distortion and the field of view for this camera. And if we have the sensor moving relative to the lens, which is the case when you have image stabilization turned on, it's going to throw off that process and introduce noise into your point cloud. So it's very important to shut off image stabilization, which is on by default in this camera and a lot of other mirrorless or DSLR cameras. Next, we can keep going through here. It is critical that the hot shoe is functioning, but by default that is the case with this camera, so we don't need to change anything there. Next we're going to go to the button dial setting, and we're going to scroll down, and we're going to change the setting shoot without card. It's on right now, so if I didn't have a card in the camera, it would still allow me to take a picture. It would still create a geotag, and so we definitely want to shut that off for a couple of reasons. One, we don't want to have any weird behavior with the camera telling us that an image was captured but no actual image existing. And then most of the time you'll do some sort of ground test where you're having the GeoSnap system trigger the camera and then looking for the red LED to illuminate. This way, if you send a trigger command and there's no card in it, it won't take a picture. So it's just another way to indicate that you don't have a card in the camera and that you need to fix that before you start your mission. Okay, and then the other thing that we're going to shut off here is the touch screen. Just don't want to accidentally be bumping the screen and having that get messed up. Okay, we're done in this menus, and now we're going to move on to the power management. So we don't want the camera shutting off mid-mission, so we're going to shut off auto power off. And then we don't want to risk our camera overheating and shutting off prematurely, so we're going to set this temperature to high. And since we're not actually holding the camera, we can tolerate it getting a little hotter than usual. And then the final thing that we're going to change is with the save data setup here. I prefer to have the image numbering scheme start from 1 every time I clear the card. That way I can at a glance understand how many images were captured. It's a little bit easier to at least mentally connect them with the geotags. So I'm going to change this to renew. So those are all the settings that I recommend being changed from default for the FujiFilm GFX 100S. We aren't going over exposure settings in this video, but this will give you a good sense of the menu settings and the dials and switches that should be adjusted before using this camera for an aerial mapping and modeling mission.